So if we have thoughts in our head that medicine that isn't there can help us, it can work in the reverse. If we have negative thoughts in our head, that how is your life going to be if you have continual negative thoughts in your head? It's not going to turn out well. It probably won't be to what your real dreams are. But also the power of our mentality. If you put positive thoughts in your head, I thought about healing my own body. I had positive vibrations. I didn't let my mind go to a negative place because I didn't want to go there. Take it from my words, from my soul. I take absolute pleasure from hearing people achieve their dreams and their goals. And I hope someone hears something that they need to hear today to take the action that they want to take, whether that's giving to another charity, helping people, becoming whatever you want to become. You can do it. It's possible.
The Thomas Green podcast is owned and made possible by Ethical Marketing Service. If your business is struggling with Google or Facebook ads, maybe you're frustrated figuring it out or there's a performance issue, Ethical Marketing Service has worked on hundreds of accounts and we can help in this area. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you would like to find out if we can help, it's a free, no salesy consultation call and the link is in the description. Enjoy the episode. Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have John Petrelli. John, welcome.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for having me, buddy.
I am very happy to have you. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I've been a fitness trainer for the last 30 years. I work with all walks of life. I've worked with, sometimes I could talk, sometimes I can't. I worked with Hollywood celebrities and Grammy-Award-winning artists to moms and dads to athletes, and really found my passion over 30 years ago through a lot of trial and tribulation, through getting arrested, through having anger as a youth, and finding a new path in life where earlier I was so selfish about what my needs were and what I needed to make me whole, to really helping other people, and found that I received much more in giving and helping them on their journey than I was ever thought was possible. So that's a little snippet of who I am in my intro.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I do like speaking to fitness people because I think there's a lot of overlap between fitness and achievement. A lot of those principles cross over quite nicely. But I also wanted to ask you about, you had some adversity with GBS. I haven't said the full pronunciation because I'm not entirely sure I would say it correctly. But I would love to start with your story and how that went for you and kind of how you dealt with the adversity.
Sure, this is a great question. So GBS, or I had never heard of it, is also called Guillain-Barré Syndrome, and I also heard it called Guillain-Barré. The last physician I was dealing with, a neurologist, called it Guillain-Barré Syndrome. So that's what we'll go with. Happened in 2000.
I wouldn't have got it right.
It's okay. I still screw it up. So that happened in 2021, and I was paralyzed. I was fully paralyzed, could only move my eyeballs. I was in the ICU for 10 days. But what I like to tell people is I had an epiphany being paralyzed in 2021 that I actually was paralyzed much earlier in life in my mentality. That led me into finding about myself, becoming a trainer, working with people in well-being and health and wellness. When I was 18, in my mentality, we can get into it later or now, but I ended up getting arrested for violence. I was living a life of fear. I was living a life of anger. I was living a life that led to violence because I wasn't whole with myself. I didn't have the self-confidence. I didn't have different things in my life that led me down that path. And I was like mentally and physically paralyzed. But dealing with that at 18, getting incarcerated, going through the judicial system, doing all that, in turn, I found later helped prepare me, even though it was some of the worst moments of my life, it helped prepare me for things that were coming down the line, that if I hadn't had adversity in my life, if I hadn't had challenges, if I didn't have failures and make mistakes, I may never have been able to handle the fact that I became physically paralyzed. I wouldn't have had the mental capacity. I wouldn't have had the fortitude. The thread of who I am as a human being would have been different. So I want people to understand as you hear this story, my life is not perfect. Nobody's life is perfect. One moment doesn't define who you are, and we can move past the shame. You can accomplish anything and really do anything if you're willing to work at it and take account for the things you've done that are wrong, take responsibility for them, and move forward. And so those things that I did earlier in my life really prepared me for overcoming what was the biggest obstacle in my life in 2021, being paralyzed.
Did you get to the cause of why you felt violent, and then also you felt figuratively paralyzed at that time?
100%. You know, it took a lot of years of introspect. It took a lot of years of working on myself. And number one, just being brave enough with myself to verbalize things. Cause I think maybe sometimes, Thomas, as men, I don't want to pigeonhole, because we're all different, we're all individuals, but sometimes as men, emotions like sadness can be seen as weakness, of caring can be seen as weakness. And I didn't have the fortitude in me at that age to even verbalize those things. But it goes way back to my childhood. And what I say here, I want people to understand, is I take full accountability for everything I did. If I say that, like in this story, there are certain attributes my dad had, and he's not responsible for what I did. So I take full accountability. My peer group also wasn't great for me, but it was because I didn't have the awareness. I didn't have the strength. I didn't have all the things needed to go on my own path. So I kind of fell within the crowd. So I take full responsibility for everything I did. And we only have the tools that we have at the time in that moment. So my father was born in 1921. He grew up during the Depression. His family, his dad had another family on the side that they didn't know about till he was a teenager. And so he didn't really have a father once he found that out. And he had a lot of anger with that. And my dad went into the military at 18 years old, and he served in World War II. He served in Korea, and then he served in Vietnam. And so his life for 30 years was warfare, was trying to stay alive, was in combat. And he didn't have the comfortability to express that to me when he was a man and I was his child. I just knew that he had issues. And the word PTSD was never even used back then. My dad would wake up in night terrors and screaming, and, you know, it wasn't really talked about. I didn't know what was going on as a child. In the military, showing weakness can definitely be seen as a liability, right? Showing vulnerability. So we never had those discussions. But I always felt that my dad had a certain amount of anger. I wasn't able to have conversations with him. He was a general and I was private first class, and I've never worked past that. Like, I never was able to put my input in. And like I said, it's not, he did the best he had with the circumstances he had, right? And if he could have done better, he would have done better. He was a great provider in so many ways. He loved me in so many different ways, but that's the way emotionally he could help me. I never heard my dad call me son until I was 21 years old. And I never heard him say, I love you, until I was 21 years old and he moved away. So I yearned for that affirmation. I yearned for that connection. And I had a tremendous amount of fear as a child of always doing things wrong. I wasn't great academically in school. I was diagnosed with dyslexia. I never did well with my grades, and that built anger and frustration. I was never good enough. My mom, God bless her, Thomas, my mom is 4'11" of Italian. Both of my parents were born in Italy. If you come to my house, she is loving and caring. She saved my life. If you stop by my house from the UK on the way through, you're going to gain about 11 pounds in a half hour, because she's going to cook for you. She's going to shower you with love. And she helped bring a lot of balance to my life. But as I started progressing and getting into manhood, I had this fear trapped inside of me. I was always going to do something wrong. I was never good enough. I had anger because I could never communicate fully. And that anger ended up manifesting itself, in my case, in violence. And so I got in a lot of altercations in the street, got beat up, beat people up, all of it wrong. And I had literally just graduated high school. And I know teachers passed me because they didn't want to see me anymore because my grades were so bad. I know they literally passed me through school, some of them just for that. And it was the last night where our friends are all getting together. before we're supposed to go off to college. I had one college that would accept me as a community college. They can't deny you. My future was not that bright, but I was going to college. There was this big event called Fireworks Over Utica. It's in upstate New York. And there was a lot of craziness going on. And if I replayed in my head, there was violence going on. I saw a couple fights where people were getting beat up. The mob was attacking them. And I didn't have, inside my soul, I wanted to help that individual. I didn't want to be part of the crowd, but I didn't have the self-confidence to say, what are we doing here? You guys are hurting an individual. So I went along with what the momentum was of the crowd and saw that and didn't do anything about it. Well, on my way back to our car, we ended up getting into an altercation with two individuals that had just gotten out of jail, and this big fight ends up ensuing. And at 18, I made a split-second decision and I kicked someone in the face. And that person went down and they cracked their skull open on the back of a curb. And for a moment, I was proud of myself. It's shameful to say, but I was proud of myself, and all my friends gave me adulation. And then I let out like a primal scream of like, when I struck this individual, all this anger coming out, hate. And as I sat there and I saw that this person may be dead, that all was fleeting. That all was leaving me. And I had realizations of like, what am I doing? And a lot of it at that time, Thomas, was selfish. Like, did I just kill someone? What's going to happen to me? What is my life going to be like now? I've always felt for the last 5-6 years that I was going to end up dead or in jail. And so in this melee of this crowd, someone grabs me from behind, and I go to confront that individual because there was two of them. And I think it's this other person's, which turns out to be his brother. We found out later, and it wasn't. It was an undercover police officer. And that police officer was slapping a handcuff on my wrist. And I turned to confront him. And it doesn't go over well when you try to strike a police officer. So I get slammed to the ground. I get handcuffs put on me. My ears are ringing. And this all happens literally in 10 to 15 seconds. And here I am at 18 years old, finally graduating high school, trying to do something to go to college. And I'm laying on the ground, may have killed somebody. And now striking a police officer, trying to strike a police officer. In my future, what my thoughts were at the time, Thomas, were surrounded by violence, were surrounded by the fact that I was never good enough, that I was going to end up in jail, that I belonged in jail. And now my thoughts were coming to reality. And here I am put in the back of a police car. I watch as they try to revive this individual, and they're unsuccessful. And then the fire department comes and they're unsuccessful, and I see blood on the ground, and I see what I find out after to be this person's brother getting arrested because he's trying to help his brother and he's going crazy. And then an ambulance comes, and once again, shamefully, I'm thinking about what is going to happen in my life. I know that I need to change my future. I know I need something has to change in me. I know that there's goodness in me, and I just got to be brave enough to live it, to talk it, to act it. And so I end up getting put in jail that night. That individual gets revived. I end up going through the court system and everything that happens with that. And I work my way through there. And I have an epiphany that I wish I could tell you this was my rock bottom. I wish I could tell you that was the absolute thing that changed my life. But it was the start of me having the realization that I need to change my peer group, which I'm not strong enough to even tell my friends. I'm embarrassed. I need to change my environment. I need to change my mentality. And for me, I ended up having to change my geography. And I had to move away because I wasn't a strong enough individual. And so I worked my way through the court system. This individual lives. Thank God. There's several more incidents that happen in the street with violence until it comes down to someone that is known for carrying a gun says, I'm going to kill you the next time I see you. And that was my bottom. And that was where I didn't have many more options. And that was then at 20 years old. I had a couple $100 to my name. I made a phone call and I called a friend of mine who lived in California. And I said, listen, I'm going to end up dead or I'm going to end up in jail. I need some help. I need to get out of the neighborhood. Can you help me? And thank God for him. Good friend of mine, Daryl Hagan, offered me a hand when I didn't have a lot of options. And he said, I don't have any room for you, but if you want to sleep on my floor, you can sleep on my floor and I'll be happy to have you out. And I had a couple $100 in a duffel bag. I bought a plane ticket. And at 20, 21 years old, I got on a plane. And that's when my parents took me to the airport. And it was long before TSA, long before probably many of your young listeners even remember that there was no TSA and someone can walk you to the gate. And my father at that moment said, he said, I love you. And he called me son. And that was honestly really a turning point for healing my life. And I got on a plane and I headed to a new life. And I could feel as miles were going by on that plane, as I sat in that chair, that weight was being lifted from my body and that I could re-identify myself because I had this identity, this bullshit identity of being, man, sorry, of being a tough guy, having this identity I had to hold up in front of people to continue this vicious cycle of who I thought they wanted me to be, what I got affirmation from being a tough guy, and I could leave that. And I started at 21 years old. I moved to California, lived on the floor, ate cans of tuna fish and whatever I could scrape together, did crazy meaning jobs. Like I've done every job in the world before I was a trainer, but I was cutting lawns and delivering stuff and been a bouncer. And while I saved money to take a test to be a trainer, and that was a change in my life. And your simple question to my long answer to your simple question, brother, was, do you know what created this anger? So yes, I do. For many years, I didn't. For many years, I felt such shame about it that I can never be my authentic self and tell people of my history. But I've come to realize that we all make mistakes. And I hope people don't make the mistakes I've made or they can see the same traits maybe in them to a different degree and understand that they can change things and they can lose the shame and they can work towards a different future and they can use those events in their life to help other people have that realization, because as human beings, we share so much in common. And that was my journey through anger and violence and hate, and kind of got me to where I am now.
Well, thank you very much for sharing it. And you mentioned the term authentic. I was going to say thank you for being authentic and transparent about everything that you were. The lots of things occur to me in terms of what I want to follow up with. The first thing is, do you feel like you've forgiven yourself for all what you just shared? Maybe I'm wrong. It seems like that's hit you more. It's hit you harder more than GBS did. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's fair to say. And I have forgiven myself to a degree. And I know that the things like, we'll get into it. I wrote a book. None of these stories would be in that book if that didn't happen to me. And people have read my book in prison and reached out to me and said, man, I headed down that same path. And now I was just looking forward to getting out in the next 3 years, but now I'm putting together a plan to change my life before I get out. So if I didn't have these events, and I can't go back in time and take it away, I can't go back and take away the pain and the bad things I did. So I have to own it. So yes, I've given myself some grace to a degree, but I also do feel some guilt, and replace shame with maybe guilt. I don't know if that's the right word, but I have to use it for good. I have to turn it around. I can only look forward, and I can deal with what's presently in front of me. I can't go back.
So what would you say that you haven't forgiven yourself for?
The physical act of striking someone and doing it over many times over. So, and just talking to you right now, brother, is help healing, right? Because I hope that maybe just one person that may hear this conversation, even though a lot of it right now is a one-sided conversation, will hear this and get some relief and release some shame. So I think it's just a physical act, of what I did, and being powerless to go back to change it, but understanding it's powerful to go ahead and use it.
Taking the best thing you can from any experience, whether it's good or bad, I think there's a great principle, and you've obviously got that down. But I would suggest forgiving yourself all the way, because that person was there voluntarily. Also, I'm assuming you didn't just go and attack them unprovoked. Kind of feel like it's kind of unlucky for that to happen. And then if there are loads of examples where people haven't been unlucky, I would say you kind of deserve forgiveness. But I don't know what you think of that.
I thank you for that. And, part of my process right now, someone had brought up to me recently is, and I think this will help with my process as an individual, is I'm looking to find the person that was on the other side of the table of this when this happened. And I want to, whether they accept it or not, I want to offer an apology. I want to maybe have a conversation, whatever the level of comfortability is, and let them know how I feel. And if there's anything I can do to help them in this time. Because look, I had a certain amount of challenges as a youth, or trauma, or however we want to label it. But the little research I did about these individuals, they had more reason to act out than I did. They dealt with different types of violence, drug addiction in the household, and all that. So yeah, man, I'm working on this. My life is a continual process. I'm trying to get better every day. And part of that is just continually healing this, and people like you offering a platform where I can verbalize this and hopefully help other people. I'm so grateful for it, because otherwise stories like this just sit internally and fester. And so I'm so grateful for you, and I have gratitude, and I thank you for allowing me to share that, because I don't know what degree, but a little bit of degree of pain just leaked out.
Well, that's good. Well, it's definitely worth having the conversation then. If that person is, let's say, genuine and a good person to speak to, they will probably have the opinion, I'm guessing, they'd say, don't worry about it. I was just as bad as you, but I kind of won, you won the fight and I didn't, kind of thing. But I can say that I've been on the receiving end of, in the same way that you have, I've been in fights where I've won and then also I've lost, and I've been on the receiving end of a bar stool, which over the head, where I had to get stitches for, and it doesn't carry with me at all. Like, I don't think of that person without any animosity, and if at any point that person felt remorse and tried to get hold of me, and I'd be the same. I'd be like, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal to me. So, and I think you would deserve that kind of response as well.
Well, I thank you for that, buddy. I thank you for that. Very much.
I did not know I was going to mention that in this this conversation, though. The last thing
I'm
I
glad
thought
you
I'd bring
did.
up.
You never know where it takes you. So that was where I was paralyzed in my life. I did a lot of work on myself. I had an insane journey from just becoming a trainer of helping people and healing my soul as I was helping them. I had no idea that would happen, to getting to work through Hollywood and going on international tours and all this crazy stuff, and then to being paralyzed in 2021. And so I can bring you through that little bit of a journey. So in 2021, I ended up getting COVID. My kids got it. I'm teaching jujitsu and I'm around 20 kids at a time. And so it's being passed around. My kids, I have two wonderful boys that are 12 and 9. They got it, and it was like a blip on the radar screen. They barely had sniffles, and they were done with it. My wife got it, and it was kind of the same for her. And then I got it. And at that time, if we remember, we had to quarantine. So I couldn't do work or anything. And I'm a bit of a maniac, Thomas, where I'm trying to work towards balance, but I'm always like type A doing something. So here I have COVID and I'm doing the assault bike for an hour. I'm creating family projects that I'm building fireplaces and doing concrete stuff that doesn't even need to be done. And I've run myself into the ground. And the reason I bring that up is because the doctors don't know where GBS came from. It could have come from COVID. It can come from a vaccination, and it also can come from a bacterial infection. Those are the top three, they told me. So I had a bacterial infection the month before. I had someone's toenail in jiu-jitsu, just happened to cut my shin, and I got cellulitis, and I had a bacterial infection. So I have all these things that could have created it. But after I got through COVID, my feet went numb, and I couldn't feel my toes or my feet, and I didn't say anything to anybody. Once again, probably bullshit machismo about not expressing what's going on and whatnot. We're going to work our way through this. So my feet go numb for about a week, and I don't say anything. I go back to work, working long hours, and then my hands start going numb where I can't feel my fingers. And I play that off for as long as I can. And then I wake up one morning to go to work, and my vision is super blurry. And I do not have a urinary stream anymore. Like I want to pee, but I can't pee. So my wife gets up, and I tell her these things, and God bless my wife, Cheyenne. She is the yin to my yang. She balances me out. So I tell her, I said, baby, I have about 10 clients today. Then I'll be home, and maybe we should go see a doctor. So she goes, no, you're going to cancel your day of work. You can't feel your feet. You can't pee. You're having trouble seeing, and we're going to the doctor now. Thank God. So we go to urgent care, and at this urgent care, they start doing some simple tests on me, and I faint. I go unconscious. I'm not known for going unconscious. I'm not squeamish if someone takes blood and all this. So they bring me back. I wake back up, and they're giving me tests, and the doctor comes to me and says, look it, of potentially having an autoimmune disorder, either MS, multiple sclerosis, or GBS. That's the first time I'd ever heard of GBS. He goes, we do not have the ability to test for that here. You need to get a spinal tap. They're going to draw fluid from your spine, and they're going to look for a certain protein. The hospital down the street has the ability. I'm going to call emergency. We're going to get you down there, and we want you to take this test. So as I'm in the urgent care, the way I describe it, Thomas, is like my body is like a battery that's just getting drained. I'm now having trouble standing up. I can't shake hands. My reflex, when they hit your knee with the hammer to see if you have reflex, it's gone. I have no reflex. I can't feel it. And now the numbness is ascended up to about my knees. So we go to the emergency room. They bring me in. They give me a spinal tap. They draw the fluid out of my spine, and they tell me it takes maybe an hour or so for us to get the test results back. I live a mile from the hospital. They said, you can go home and relax there if you're more comfortable, or you can stay here. But if you decide to go home and this starts ascending up your body, you need to come back in immediately, because if you have GBS, it will shut your lungs and your heart down just like it has your shins, your feet. And if your lungs and heart shut down, it's over. So I go home. I'm exhausted. I take a 20-minute nap. When I wake up 20 minutes later, I cannot feel from my waist down. My legs are not working. I can't stand. My wife has to help me to stand. Here I am, this physical guy that's working out 7 days a week, does jujitsu, boxing, all this stuff, so defined by my physicality. And in less than 24 hours now, I can't even really walk. So my wife puts me in the car. We go back to the emergency room, and the test comes back that I'm positive for Guillain-Barré Syndrome. They put me in a wheelchair, and they wheel me up. They don't wheel me up. They bring me in the elevator, and they wheel me, put me to the third floor to the ICU. Now, I have no idea what GBS is, only what they're telling me. I've done no research on that. We get to the ICU, and there are people in different states of disarray in the ICU. There's people I know are not going to make it. Elderly people that have been in car accidents. This person's on a respirator. And I make some definitive decisions in this time of uncertainty and go, I'm never going to complain. I'm never going to go, woe is me. I'm not going to say, why is this happening to me? I'm never going to complain at all. I don't know what the hell this thing is, but I'm going to get out of here. I have a family that needs me. I have boys that need a father. I have a wife that needs a husband. And I am going to find a way out of here. So they wheel me into the ICU, and I get to a point where I can only move my eyeballs at a certain point. And they're coming in to give me tests, and it's so humbling to be someone that really is just such a physical being, to lose all of that and not be able to shake hands, not be able to raise my head to see who's coming in my room. But as I alluded to earlier, if I hadn't gone through so many things in my life, if I hadn't gone through getting arrested, if I hadn't gone through sleeping on floors, if I hadn't had to look down the barrel of a gun, if I hadn't almost died in the ocean in Alaska, all these things that happened in my life, I probably wouldn't have had the fabric of who I needed to be to get out of the hospital. And so in there are things I did that helped me. I love doctors. I love nurses. I love our caregivers. And I don't discount Western medicine, but I made some definitive decisions to do certain things that helped me. I said, I want to fill my life with positive vibrations. I don't want to hear the beeping of the heart monitor. I don't want to hear the moans and cries of people in the ICU. So for me, one of my former clients and dear friend of 20 years is Ziggy Marley, Bob Marley's first son. I played Bob Marley and Ziggy 24/7 so I had positive vibrations in my room to keep my mind occupied. That was number one. Number two is when I had to eat pureed food because I could no longer swallow. And my wife took a look at what they were serving. And I feel sorry for our caregivers. I feel sorry for our patients, because my choices was either like a hot dog and French fries or chicken fingers and something that looked like it was under a heat lamp for 2 weeks. So I wasn't going to get any nourishment on a cellular level from that stuff. So my wife went home and pureed organic vegetables. She made me soup and brought me healthy nutrition. So I would have positive vibrations and music. I had cellular help coming to nourish my body, to help fight off what was going on. And then whether it helped or not, it helped me. People can have their own opinion, but I prayed, I gave gratitude, and I started commanding myself and my body to heal itself. First, kindly asking, politely asking, and then demanding that my body start healing itself. If it did nothing more than occupy my mind space from going into a negative place, it helped me. So I did that 24/7. And there were points where I could only move the top digit of my finger. I didn't focus on what I didn't have, that I couldn't sit up. I didn't focus that I couldn't make a fist. I focused on, I can only move this friggin' right finger right here, and I'm going to keep moving it until I can move it a little bit more, and then I'm going to try on my next finger. I'm going to try my toes. And so I continually focused on what I could do as opposed to what I didn't have anymore. And man, when I lost my physicality, I relied on my mentality. It made me mentally stronger. I had to rely on that to get me through. My physical being was gone. When I lost my dignity and I was in the hospital and I soiled myself because I couldn't get up to go to the bathroom, and they had to run a catheter in me, and I coded out when they put me in an MRI, and the code is going out for every doctor to come and help me. And my wife hears that and she's freaking out. It taught me about humility, that I'm more compassionate now when I hear about the trials that people are going through, because you don't know what people go through. And when I had to deal with all these insecurities, when they had to put me in a wheelchair and shower me in my own feces because I couldn't get up, and I dealt with all my insecurities, I lost my faith for a while, and it strengthened my spirituality. it strengthened that part of me. So I saw it in hindsight. When one door was closing, there was another door for me to open and explore and to become better in. And the reason I want people to understand this is because, man, I feel like if I can do this, someone that's been arrested, someone that has dyslexia, brother, I spell so bad that when I type something, spell check is like, we don't have a clue of what you're trying to do here. We have no suggestions for you, man. If I can do this, I wrote a book from this. I got inspired to write a book. I never have written anything. Imagine what other people can do. Imagine what you can do. We are not tapping into our potential. If you want to be a doctor, you want to be a podcaster, you want to be an attorney, you want to be a great father or a wife, there is so much that we can do that we leave on the table. And unfortunately for me, at that point in my life, I needed to reach my bottom and get arrested to change my life. I needed to get paralyzed to find these things out. But going forward, I know, man, there's so much more I can do. There's so many more people I can help. There's so many people I can inspire. There's so many people that I can put a reaching hand out to and have humility and compassion. So after 10 days, bro, I got out of the hospital. They wheelchaired me out. And for 7 days a week, I did therapy. And I never stopped. There were times where I could only move my hand. There were times where I wanted to walk to the couch and I collapsed and had to get back up. But I graduated from a wheelchair to a walker to a cane, and I never complained, and I kept going until I could get back to full functionality and be sobbing like a little baby on your podcast right now. But that was my journey. It took me 3 months to do it, but I just was consistent every day in doing it. And that's the longest I've ever gone without taking a breath and talking. I'm glad you could be part of that. I'm sorry you could be part of that too.
No sorry is necessary. And it's one of the most inspiring stories I think I've ever heard in talking to people. So thank you very much. That for whatever reason this occurs to me, of all the things that you did in order to recover, so you listed off a bunch of stuff, which was great. And it made me think that you were doing absolutely everything that you could. So what is available to me, I'm going to do it all. Is there anything that you think made the biggest difference? Have you thought about what was it that, made the difference to get you healing, get you healthy? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I do have a thought there. So all these things that I did, the techniques that I used, that I just did on the fly, right? Whether it was the music, the nutrition, everything, it was all driven by the love for my family, and what they mean to me. And it was driven by the fact that maybe my dad and I should have had a better relationship. And I wanted to be there for my kids' relationship. And I wanted to be there for my wife. So I focused on what they meant to me to help me get through the sitting in my own feces, to help me get through the fact they had to run a tube up me because I could no longer pee. And it was all worth it to get me out of there. And it was just something I had to go through to get back to where I wanted to be, which was with them. And so that is my driving force. Your why, if you want to call it a why, can be whatever it is. It can be whatever it is, but if it's strong, it will take you through the toughest times. It will help you through when things are challenging, because adversity is going to come to all of us. It is going to come in some facet. Someone's going to pass away. There's a car accident. It's what we do when adversity happens. What is your driving force? For me, my driving force hugely now is to help people, to help them achieve their greatness, to help them through a tough time. So the reason I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning now and do things or whatever it is, or stay up late to educate myself, is because that's my why. And that's what took me through, bro.
Did you ever have those thoughts of fear and, maybe I'm not going to make it through this? And how did you cope with that?
I have fear in my life still. I do. What fear my kid's going to get hurt, fear something may happen to my wife, whatever. But I have to say, as I go back, and this isn't machismo, didn't allow really, if it came into my mind, it was so fleeting because I was filling my mind with so many other things. I was keeping even though my body couldn't be active, I was keeping my mind trying to make my body active, like just to squeeze my hand and thinking about different things. I used my voice and asked my caregivers, my nurses and stuff, what's going on with your life? How are you? Do you have kids? I was learning about them. So I try not to let it creep in. Can't say it never did, but I don't remember any moments right now that was beyond a split second that it may have come in, because as soon as I caught myself, I was putting it out there somewhere else. So I've had plenty of fears in my life, but I can say in that stretch, I never doubted myself that I was going to get out. I just didn't give myself another thought or another option. And some of it was subconscious with the music, right? It's hard. Like if you fill the room with happy music, it's hard to be in a bad mood, right? If you fill the room with negative people or that are just complaining or whatever, it's hard to be happy. You have to work towards it. So I had put myself in a state where I had to work to be fearful. If I wanted to be fearful, I had to work to be unhappy. I was like, man, I don't want to swear, but I was like, fuck this. I am getting the hell out of here.
And if I'm not mistaken, it is something that doctors speak about in the ICU. It's like there is an element of someone either is willing to fight for it or not. And if they're not willing to fight for it, then, you know, that there is, I don't know if it can be proved necessarily, but I think it is something that comes up. Partially, I don't know whether to ask about this or not, because it's like a roller coaster ride. But you said that you almost died in the ocean. Is that?
That is true. And that was a huge epiphany for me. Yeah. So I'm an avid fisherman and I've made several trips to Alaska. And man, I'm a nut when it comes to things. If people don't know that yet, like I go all in, man. If I like you and you're my friend, I will take a bullet for you. I will do whatever it takes. If I'm all in, I'm playing soccer, I'm all in on soccer, 100%, or I won't do it. So when it comes to fishing, people have labeled me as a little bit crazy. These are my dear friends. It's okay. Like we go to Alaska, it's light out for 21 hours. So I'm going to fish for 20 hours because when it's done, it's done. And I got to wait another year to go back. So we go fishing all day long, like 10, 12 hours. And then we come back on our own boat and they cook for us and everything. And my buddies who I adore and I love, they're drinking and having fun. I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and drink alcohol and BS about other stuff when I could be fishing. So I'm going out fishing. So against their wishes, it's like 10 o'clock at night. I think it's barely light out still. I take this small 16-foot skiff out and I make some absolute errors and I don't bring my radio, ship to shore radio. And as I'm getting out there, the waves start getting bigger. And now I'm out there far enough where I can't see any inhabitants. There's land, but there's like no one around, no boats that can come and save me. And this is huge, man. We have this fight or flight mentality. And either through conditioning or through my genetics, I have this thing where the prior to a confrontation where fear sets in, I immediately go to the fight thing. I go towards it. Maybe it's what makes firemen great, whatever. It's served me in my life and it's also served me wrong. But when I feel that, the uncomfortability of the butterflies in my stomach are worse than just dealing with what is in front of me. Now, other people may make an intelligent move and turn around and go, you know what? There's high waves. I'm by myself. It's going to be dark here in a minute. Let's turn the boat around. Dummkopf over here, it goes, my head starts going, what is going to happen if I turn this tiller? It's a boat tiller. If I turn it too hard, what was going to happen? What can happen? What could possibly happen? And I feel fear. And so what I have to do is I have to turn the boat tiller as hard as I can to see what's going to happen. Well, let me tell you what happens. The centrifugal force of the wave in my boat going sideways shot me out of that boat like a rocket. And before I could even have whereabouts, I'm in the ocean. And thank God I had my life vest on and I'm in freezing water. There's only about a half hour light left. Now, good and bad thing is I had the tiller turned full throttle. I'm going as fast as I can and I had it turned as far as it would go to the right. So as I'm getting my bearings, I'm in the ocean. I'm like, holy shit, what's going on? I'm in the ocean. The water's cold. I'm spitting up salt water. All of a sudden I hear something and I'm trying to put together what I'm hearing. It's the motor of my boat that is now doing a 360-degree circle headed for my head. And it's coming right at me. I have a couple seconds barely to react. Now the thing that's saving me, the life vest, is keeping me on the top, right in alignment for the bow of my boat in the motor. And so I have to take a huge breath, try to go underneath the water. By the way, Dork here also had waders on, hip waders that are filling up with water. You should never wear that on a boat out in the ocean. So now they're helping me actually sink. The life vest is holding me up and I have to push underneath the water. And I see the prop wash go right over my head and the propeller of the boat go inches from my face. I come back to shore, I spit, not shore, surface, I spit salt water out. I'm trying to process everything. The thing that almost killed me now is the thing that can potentially save me. If I don't catch this boat, I am dead because I'm out at sea. It's getting dark. So the boat is making another pass by. It's doing a 360-degree turn. I try to time it. I get to the surface. Now I got to navigate, grabbing the gunny well and not getting pulled into the propeller. So I have to navigate, getting close to where this boat's getting, not getting knocked out, because if it hits me in the head, I'm fish food. It's all over. I'm going to be unconscious floating at sea. So it comes by. I do my best to grab it. I grab the gunny well. I can't hold on. My hands are going numb. The boat keeps going. I let go. So I cut off one of my waders. I have a knife. I don't even know how I got the whereabouts to do this. I know after that I cut my wader off and I had put my knife back in the sheath. I pull it off. I cut one of my waders off, my hip wader. The boat comes by. I grab the gunny well. I'm now getting pulled horizontal and my feet, which only has a sock on it now, is getting pulled into the propeller. And I pull up, I get myself up onto the gunny well of the boat, the side well of the boat. I flop into the boat, collapse, and I'm able to pull the kill switch on the boat and stop the engine. And here I am in the middle of Alaskan waters, 11 o'clock at night, freezing, trying to figure out what the hell I did, realizing I have a son at that point that is waiting for me home. I have a wife. It's no longer me. It's no longer just my selfish needs. And I make a truce, brother, with anger and fear. And I say, you're no longer going to control me. As I'm laying there at the bottom of that aluminum boat, and my heightened senses are like, I can hear the water underneath me just banging up against the boat. I can hear the wind. It's starting to get dark. There's stars in the sky. And I make a promise to myself that I will no longer be selfish. And I will act accordingly in fear. That it's no longer going to control me. That in this fight or flight moment, I'm going to make the right decisions. That if I have to go into the fight, it's to help people. It's necessary, not to prove to myself anymore that I can handle this. And I thank God I had a change of clothes and a dry bag. And I talk about this in my book. One thing I'm grateful for guys is, like, my wife will go to the beauty salon, come back, and I will unfortunately not realize she got her hair done. And she's like, you ain't going to say anything about my hair? Well, I get back to shore. I have to change because I'm embarrassed. I don't want to tell my friends that are waiting on shore. As I come back, I change my clothes. My hat's gone. I got one wader, hip wader now. I'm wearing a whole different thing. And thank God for Jack Daniels. And thank God for guys not realizing and noticing every detail, because my friends have no clue that I've changed all my clothes, that I'm missing a wader. And I don't even tell them this story because I'm so embarrassed until I write my book, and this story's in the book, and I send them a free copy. And I go, you guys might want to look at the chapter called Alaskan Waters. And they were all like, I cannot believe you did that. But yeah, that's how I almost died in Alaska, and was really a pivotal moment in my life where I came to a truce with fear and anger and said, I don't have to prove anything. I'll put my life on the line to save someone, to help someone, but I don't need to prove anything to my ego anymore about what I'm capable of.
Well, the book sounds really interesting. For those that are listening, can you share a little bit about it and also where they can grab a
Yeah.
copy?
So once again, I want people to know that if I can do this, I can do a #1 Amazon new release without having any experience, without being able to type, with having dyslexia. You can do anything. Whatever you're listening to right now, and you have a dream inside of you, you have something deep down that you want. I believe you can do more. Do you believe you can do more? I hope you believe you can do more, because you can. So, in the process of healing and being out of work, there's a whole story behind it. I had a great editor and who became my co-author, Scott Burr. We put together stories of my life and I put them in a book. It's called Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer. And it's all my trials and what I've learned. And the blessing is, I have had people with GBS read the book, or people's whose family members had GBS read the book and go, can you talk to my aunt in Connecticut? She's 70 years old. She just got diagnosed with GBS. She just needs someone that can relate, can give her some tips. And it has been an absolute blessing to be in this world of GBS survivors that I would have never been in. And so that thing that paralyzed me has brought me full of life. It has brought me full of new tools that I can help people. And that is all in my book. And the book is just a little memento that we can do anything, Thomas. And it's called Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer. You can find it on Amazon. It's on Audible. The audiobook has an extra 3 hours of content. It's like a podcast style. And man, and you can find me on John Petrelli on Instagram or on Facebook. And I know I don't want to use the word sorry. I know I've dominated so much of this airwave, and you've been so gracious in just hosting me and listening, and I'm so thankful. But I wrote something down that you had brought up so intelligently earlier. And can I leave with one final point?
Sure, go for it.
So you had talked about, we don't know, and doctors don't know if the things that we do in our mind necessarily help or not. And I believe I felt the same way. And people may feel that way. And maybe I'm wrongfully articulating what you said, but it sounded like that to me. I want people to know this, how powerful your mind is. This is not my mumbo jumbo. You can find this in the New England Journal of Medicine or any medical trial. They do placebo tests of medication that is the real medication, and they do a placebo that may be just sugar water or just an empty pill. And they always find that the group that has the placebo shows some benefit because they believe it's the real medicine, and they show some benefit. Will they heal the whole way? Maybe not every time, but will they show some improvement? Look it up. They do. So if we have thoughts in our head that medicine that isn't there can help us, it can work in the reverse. If we have negative thoughts in our head, that how is your life going to be if you have continual negative thoughts in your head? It's not going to turn out well. It probably won't be to what your real dreams are. But also the power of our mentality. If you put positive thoughts in your head, I thought about healing my own body. I had positive vibrations. I didn't let my mind go to a negative place because I didn't want to go there. That is the power of who we are as individuals. I'm not any more powerful than anybody listening to this, than anybody else. In fact, I'm probably less. Take it from my words, from my soul, that I take absolute pleasure from hearing people achieve their dreams and their goals. And I hope someone hears something that they need to hear today to take the action that they want to take, whether that's giving to another charity, helping people, becoming whatever you want to become. You can do it. It's possible.
Well, you've been a fantastic guest. I love this conversation. Your stories are, part of the reason why I haven't talked as much is because I've just enjoyed listening to you. So you've been a great guest, and I appreciate it. John, thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you.